رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Once again we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us in this endeavor of seeking knowledge. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Ya Allah, teach us that which is beneficial for us and bless us in the knowledge you have granted us and increase our knowledge. I promised last time that I would open the floor for questions. So if anybody has any question, I will address them and then continue where we left off, inshallah. Any questions? You don't. I am not forcing you to ask question. If you have no question, that's fine. Any?
My only question is that we tried to go online to get the materials, but we did not, and we actually emailed the
Registrar.
And we didn't get a reply because we were trying to get this week material.
Okay, if you are, send me an email, because sometimes maybe they are distracted by something. So I give you my email. I can directly email them to you. My email is V as in Victor, P as in Peter, Ahmad, AHMAD, KUTTY @gmail.com. So if you don't get it, please, send me an email, and I will, please put the title, the class, because sometimes they go to the spam folder. So, okay, if that is the only question, then we will resume where we left off. Yaqub alayhi salam, this is one of the major difference between Bible and the Quran, and that shows that the source of prophetic knowledge, prophet's knowledge of these stories as well as other stories, is not Bible or any other human works. It's solely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this alone has been one of the main factors for many of the scholars who were well versed in the Jewish and Christian scriptures to embrace Islam, because they definitely recognize how this the only explanation, there is no social or historical explanation for this difference between the two versions, other than that it's divinely inspired. So Yaqub alayhi salam, in face of this plot, he realized that the brothers have plotted against Yusuf alayhi salam, and he believed firmly that this is how that dream which Yusuf had told his father is going to materialize scene by scene. So he knows he would be just like gold put in fire, he will come out of it shining. And so that's why he was patient. He was grieving, because it's human nature to grieve. The Prophet ﷺ grieved. Somebody asked Rasulullah, "You grieve too? You shed tears?" He said, "I am a human being. Allah has planted mercy in my heart." So even though he accepted the will of Allah, when Allah took his son away, and he is the one who told his daughter, who lost her son, "Inna lillahi ma ata wa lahu ma akhad wa kullu shay'in indahu bi ajalin muqaddar." God gives what is his right to give, and he takes away what is his right to take away, and everything has an appointed time with him. But having said that, he shed tears. So that's normal. There is no contradiction. It's not against, some people go extreme in their fake spirituality. They say a spiritual person, when told of the death of his son, he laughed. This is not normal. Something wrong with his mind, because this is pathological state. So healthy spirituality is what prophets, they are the mentors, because they are tutored and mentored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not anyone, any other spiritual master who is not a prophet cannot be like that. Now let's ponder on some of the lessons. Biblical story, if you read it, it's really give you the idea Yaqub alayhi salam, was really, he was unjust. He acted unjustly to, unfair, he was unfair. But biblical, Quranic story does not give that impression. You cannot. Bible clearly implies. However, the Quran absolves him of such a charge. Prophet Yaqub had a stronger love for Yusuf alayhi salam, not because of his personal choice. It was like that of Prophet Muhammad's love for his wife Aisha. Even Muslim scholars think that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was infatuated with Aisha for her beauty. Astaghfirullah, it's nothing. This Prophet himself said, I try to be fair to all of my wives, but this thing that I have for Aisha is something from God Almighty. I cannot blame. God, don't blame me for it because this is what you have. And why? Because Aisha radiallahu anha will be continuing that mission, unlike all of the other wives. Of course, they have a share in fulfilling that, but Aisha radiallahu anha would play a greater role in preserving and transmitting, and that's the whole idea. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she comes to the household of the Prophet at a very young age. Prophet trains her, and by the time Prophet dies, she is an accomplished scholar, and she is a resource person for all of the caliphs, including her father, Caliph Umar, Caliph Usman, and even Ali radiallahu anhu, in spite of the differences they had. And of course, so Ali radiallahu anhu in so many occasions sent people to ask questions from Aisha radiallahu anhu. She would have better knowledge of these things. So Yusuf is chosen by God to be a prophet unlike any of his other sons. This choice exclusively for Yusuf alayhi salam, and therefore Yaqub alayhi salam knew this instinctively, especially after this dream. He was reinforced. The dream reinforced immediately. Yaqub alayhi salam, as we said, said that this is God's choice, and he will choose you, even as he has chosen Abraham, Ishaq, and Ishmael. Likewise, Aisha was mentored by the Prophet to retain and transmit the prophetic legacy, a mission she fulfilled so successfully, admirably. I really researched into this, the role of Aisha radiallahu anha as a transmitter of traditions and fiqh and tafsir. There is no one, and the judgment is Ata ibn Abi Rabah, one of the greatest scholars of the next generation, said, of course he is a student of Aisha radiallahu anha, he said, Ma ra'aytu afqah min Aisha. I never saw anyone with deeper knowledge of religion like Aisha. And she surpasses, he said, she surpassed everyone in her mastery of hadith, mastery of fiqh, and mastery of tafsir. And of course, he also said, I never heard a speaker more articulate than Aisha. After the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, he didn't see the Prophet ﷺ, but because he heard how good and eloquent speaker Rasulullah ﷺ was. The Prophet ﷺ said, I have done my best to be fair to all, but I cannot do anything about something I have no control over, because it's coming from God Almighty. He meant that God had implanted in his heart a stronger love for Aisha, for which he was not responsible. Okay. Now another thing is dreams. How do you look at dreams? There is a Freudian concept of dreams. For him, it's mostly like suppressed. The unconscious, it's just pushing out, it's coming out into the open. Especially for him, everything is mostly, he reduces the entire phenomena into sexual instinct. So there is suppression of this sexual instinct, and it is bound to express itself, come out in dreams and things like that. Of course, I'm just simplifying this whole thing, just like Freud has simplified the whole thing and reduced it to sexual instinct. Marx did that. He did it economically, reductionism, and that's why one without the epistemological foundation of the Quran, there is no way that sciences, social sciences, can escape this kind of reductionism. And that's why Imam Ibn Khaldun put it rightly, when a person internalizes the epistemology of the Quran, and he may go to any branch of science, he will have that unifying thing, the glue that links everything together in that unity. That's the essential meaning of Tawheed. Tawheed is you are able to see unity in diversity. So everything glued together, God is the source and everything returns to God. Okay, this is, so all sciences, they are each of them, when you look at it as a solitude, it's reductionism, it's going to give a person a very, very subjective understanding of reality. But when you have the Quranic perspective of knowledge, you will see that each one has a place, and this actually also awakened Ibn Taymiyyah in his understanding of various sects in Islam. He said, it's not that any sect has no element of truth at all. Each of them have taken one aspect of the truth. Their mistake is they exaggerated it to the extent of forgetting the other. So we have to bring them all together in unity. Now, the revelation of Freud interprets it as if it is one-dimensional, it's a flat, because there is no room in his psychology for spiritual soul. It's all a material thing. But of course, Jungian psychology is different. He saw that it's much more than that, and of course, he in his psychology, and you have that Maslow and other, what is that? Yeah, Maslow and others, they have seen that human beings have other dimensions hidden in the inward journey, and that is when a psychology should be able to explore them. Of course, without the handle of revelation, they cannot do it well. Of course, it will be just simply a superficial and flat explanation they can give. The revelation tells us that not all dreams are the same. There are some which are divine inspirations, while others are due to whisperings of devils or effects of sights and scenes we dwell upon, or due to effects of food we consume. If you want a dream, you can sometimes overeat Karela, the bitter melon, or you can eat dates, so much dates, and you are bound to have some dreams. Actually, it has nothing to do with inspiration. And of course, if you sit in front of that television day in and day out and go through this, unfortunate astaghfirullah, you will have dreams which are whisperings of devils, or you may call it unconscious playing. But not all dreams are like that. We have spiritual inspirations. The Prophet ﷺ said, nothing of prophecy remains now after him except the glad tidings which righteous individuals experience. It is 1/430th of prophecy. Okay, so prophecy still remains, but it's not wahy. It's called ilham. Ilham can happen, and sometimes ilham happen to scientists also. It's because God wants to move the civilization forward through this kind of discoveries. So it doesn't have to be necessarily somebody who is a devout person. But when the Prophet is talking here, he is talking about the spiritual dreams. That is, that can be a confirmation. You know, you see your father has died and you see him smiling, and you are a pious person. That's a good sign. Or you see your father admonishing you, so that your father is upset. You know, you see a haram, that's a good sign. You see Prophet Muhammad conversing with you, or Prophet Jesus blessing you or something. These are good dreams, you know. So we also learned that prior to a first experience of revelation, the Prophet experienced dreams which would materialize exactly as he had seen them. You know, you have this, all of this early history of Islam. Where is the source for us? Imagine who reported them to us. Who? Aisha radiallahu anha. So back to that. If we have no history of Islam, we have no history of the beginning of revelation except through direct. She heard it from the mouth of the Prophet. And that's why, because she had such retentive powers, and that one also trained by the Prophet ﷺ, that any word you ask her for explanation in Arabic language, she would recite 12 verses of poetry. Just to give you the, you know, if you refer to the big expanded Oxford Dictionary, they will bring quotations from this source and that. So this is Aisha radiallahu anha. She was not only an expert in tafsir and fiqh and hadith, but also an expert in Arabic literature and poetry. Of course, all of this. So she is our source. So we have the first hand, you know, information on this, and it comes from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through Aisha radiallahu anha. The Quran, unlike Bible, tells that the Prophet Yaqub correctly interpreted Yusuf's dream as indicating God's favors for him and that he would be one of the chosen one. Okay, we are already. But he wants him not to divulge the dream to his brothers. Likewise, the Prophet tells us that we should not divulge good dreams we experience except to those who are pious and knowledgeable. So, because otherwise, jealousy. Just like Yaqub alayhi salam told his son, don't divulge this to your brothers, because they will be jealous of you, and jealousy is the vehicle of shaitan. He uses jealousy to destroy human being. The Prophet ﷺ said, Iyakum wal hasad, beware of jealousy. For jealousy consumes good deeds even as fire consumes the fuel or firewood. So, if we experience good dream, we should not. If we experience bad dream, don't even mention to anyone. Just say, Bismillahilladhi la yadurru ma'asmihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. In the name of Allah, with His name, nothing on earth or heaven can do any harm, and He is the all-hearing and all-knowing. Say it 3 times and change your position in sleep. This is what the Prophet ﷺ said. Okay, he was jealous, natural instinct. It takes spiritual training to guard against the evil effects of jealousy. Okay, beware of jealousy, for it consumes good deeds as fire devours the fuel. Can I go a little fast? Some of this I have already touched, so there is no need for us to repeat. Devil is man's number one enemy and uses jealousy, we already said. Prophet Yaqub did not believe the story the sons told him. He knew they had plotted to get rid of him. Although aggrieved, he bore patiently, all the while you trusting in God. He knew that God alone has the ultimate control of all affairs in the world. So He is in charge. But when you look at it from our just this little, vantage point, we may think it's all finished. It's not finished. It's only one. So if one were to look at, what happened to Yaqub, Yusuf alayhi salam, when he's dumped in well, is that the end of the story? No, of course, what comes after, and that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is told what comes after is better for you than, God is going to give you. And of course, before Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam died out of Arabia, when he stood up, he was one man, the whole world against him. But by the time he died, we have that last scene. Anas al-Malik reports, I cannot imagine. Anas says, I looked at the face of the Prophet looking through the window of his apartment. He looked at these believers gathered, united, shoulder to shoulder. I saw his face beaming with joy. I never saw the Prophet so bright. Of course, for him, Prophet's face is the most beautiful. So it was shining. Because, you know why? He's dying a satisfied man. He fulfilled his mission. Okay? So, okay. The Quran tells us how truth will come out in the slips of the hypocrites, Freudian slips. You know Freudian slips? Because you are unconscious, whatever you have, you believe firmly, it will come out. It's called Freudian slip. Okay, so Bush said while he declaring the Iraq war, you are embarking on a crusade. Immediately he retracted. He took it back. But we know he's a hypocrite. Okay? So, just like Yusuf brother said, we know you won't believe us even if we were to tell the truth. They know they are not telling the truth. You understand? Of course, Yaqub alayhi salam knows. So, okay. And they brought the shirt intact, not realizing that the wolf would have torn it apart before devouring him. How would Hadith says that Yaqub alayhi salam asked them, what kind of a wolf is this? He strips that shirt clean before eating him. You understand? So he didn't believe. Okay, so, but he doesn't know where he ended up and what will, but for sure he knows that God's plan is coming. Okay, now coming to the next, God was with Yusuf. Yusuf is saved from the well, faces more trials, sold into slavery, faces sexual seduction, triumphs over them with God's help, that he prefers jail over freedom. These are our session today, inshallah. We have to, okay, each of these titles will come, inshallah. So, God was with Yusuf. The whole thing, if there is one theme that runs through all of this, is that Yusuf alayhi salam faces trial after trial. The one comes after is even worse. Everything, but here is a man who surrendered to God. So we as human beings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is not a tale for entertainment. It's telling us surrender to God. He is in charge. If you let it go, you have faith and patience and let it go, that's for your own good. Outcome will be good. Wal aqibatu lil muttaqin. The good outcome is only reserved only for the muttaqin. So nothing to worry about. Compare this with that of Musa alayhi salam. Which mother would believe unless she is a believer? Musa alayhi salam's mother is a believer. That's why, this child is born. She's worried how one is the soldiers coming to kill this baby. She is so anxious, fearful, and she has this dream from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inspiration, that if you are worried about your child, put him in a basket, push him down the stream. And she did that. A mother will do that unless. So this is the difference between a believing mother who trusts in God. The same thing happened to Hajar alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Hajar, Ismail. Trust. That's what we are learning through Sa'i. But how many of us go to Hajj and doing Sa'i, remembering that and learning that and coming back with that lesson to practice? We don't. Most of us don't. Okay? If you fear Pharaoh, then place the baby in a basket and push it down the stream. Pharaoh planned to kill Musa alayhi salam, but look at the plan of Allah. Allah wanted Fir'aun to put Musa in his lap and bring him, feed him. To do what? This is the man he wanted to kill. He doesn't want Musa. But you see how Allah, they plan and Allah plans, and who is the best of planners? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see? So, caravan came and they sent the scout. Now, the Bible says, of course, there are different versions. Ishmaelites came. It is impossible. How can they be Ishmaelis? Ishmaelis are the cousins. Yaqub alayhi salam is the direct. He is son of Ishaq alayhi salam. They wouldn't know Yusuf. They wouldn't know Yaqub's children. They would know. Because if you go into other details in the scriptures, even the Jewish scriptures, they were contacts in their marriages also. So therefore, of course, the Bible has another version also, which says they were some other tribe. So this is the problem with Bible. It has been lost and burned and recovered, and so bits and pieces, and then it's not all in a coherent document because of that. Okay, that this truth has come out now through biblical research and scholarship. So that's why it's a caravan. We are sure they cannot be Ishmaelites in all probability, because they would recognize it is their own blood actually. They sent the scout looking for water, and he dropped his bucket and exclaimed, as soon as Yusuf alayhi salam clung to it, it's a baby, it's a son, it's a boy, it's hardly 7 or 8. That's why ghulam, the word ghulam means is not even 10. So the word is used in Arabic for that age group. It is not. And they sold him for a trifling price. Okay, I am not going to the other version that brothers saw, this caravan picking him up. One of them at least, who wanted to save him, came and he saw them picking up, and so of course he took money from them, things like that. I don't know, Allahu Alam, but that's not. And some Muslim Mufassirin also try to interpret the Quran that way. But I wouldn't do that, because there is nothing in the text here to suggest that. The reason they are using it was sharahu, they think they bought. Actually, it is they sold actually. They treated him, they hid him. As soon as they picked up this boy, they said, Ya Bushra, what a good news, here is a boy, So a kid, even you can say kid, okay? And then they hid him as a merchandise. And Quran, you see, this is where you will see Quranic messages. They attach no value to Yusuf. But in the sight of Allah, who is he? That's why وَشَرَاهُ بِثَمَنٍ بَخْسٍ. They sold him for a trifling price, a few coins. They attach no value to him. The same happens too in the case of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, they are looking for a milk mother. And milk mothers who want to get the babies pass by him because he's poor. They don't know the value of that baby, isn't it? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us so many through pointing to the example of some of his companions. Of course, I will come to that. You know, because their value in the sight of Allah, you know, because Allah values one's faith and character. He doesn't look at the color of our skin, he doesn't look at our status or family, wealth. These are not the values to look for. Okay? They did not know the value of Yusuf alayhi salam. We are taught to distinguish the enduring values over the transient material considerations. God values faith and character. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, because the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a preacher. He thought, okay, you know, Abu Sufyan and all these people, big shots, you know, he want to give more time to them because he thought if he could win them over, these are already believers, so he doesn't need to spend much time with them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Wasbir nafsak." Instead of going after them, wasbir nafsak. Make yourself a virtual prisoner with these people. Who are they? People like Bilal, Salman, Ammar, and Suhaib, Abdullah ibn Masud. These are the people who occupying the bottom of the Meccan of the society of the time. But in the sight of Allah, they are treated as rubbish. Astaghfirullah. But in the sight of Allah, they are of greater value. So after this ayah was revealed, every time Bilal, Suhaib and Ammar appears, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say, "Marhaba, welcome to those such people in my ummah, you know, that Allah, you know, ordered me to be with them always." You understand? And of course, Umar ibn Khattab would learn that lesson. So Abu Sufyan and others would have to wait outside, but Bilal can walk in, Salman can walk in any time. No need of asking permission. Why? Because this is how the Islamic value of people, judgment. So this is, but now, is that the value that we, my goodness, I cannot, I don't want to tell some of my experiences. I don't want to go deviate from my topic anyway. So Yusuf trials, you know, just getting worse now, sold into slavery. Is there anything worse than that? Yusuf was loved. You know, I was researching about this Africans who were brought to Muslims, some of them princes, you know, very high positions, kidnapped from the field, and they come, and believe me, the kind of persecution they suffered, beyond imagination. They are loaded into that ship, just like sardine in a can, thousands of them, chained to the deck. Many of them perish, die, before reaching the shores. And those who get to the shore, you would be really astonished at the patience they showed and the character they had. You know, their masters were really, really impressed by the character of these people. You know, that's the Islamic character they had. So This is character. Yusuf alayhi salam, a slave. But did he just wallow in his pain and self-pity? Finished. No, he is a master. He is free. Free. You could be a slave, but your mind, you are free. That's their value. You don't let them control your spirit. This is Tawheed. This is the lesson of Tawheed. No matter what happens, material circumstances, you are free as long as you don't surrender your soul to them. You know, this is Yusuf alayhi salam, he excelled in his character. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to muhsinin. And the people who interact with him, they refer to him as muhsin. Let's come. We will come to that. You know how the prison mates who had these dreams, they refer to him as muhsinin. So he is a man who excelled in his character. So he had become the favorite, and his master wanted to adopt him actually as a son. So you see how then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ, when he attained maturity, we gave him wisdom and knowledge. That is how we recompense those who do good. Actually, do good is very, very, it's not a fair word, who excel in good, muhsin. Because muhsin is the highest stage of saintliness. You go beyond the normal standard of morality to be on a higher ground of moral excellence. So Yusuf thus was armed with knowledge to sail through the rough waters of life. So Allah has given him this wisdom. You know how? Even though prophethood cannot be earned through works, but one lesson the Prophet taught us is Man amila bima alim allamahullahu ma lam ya'lam. If you act whatever little you know, God will enhance your knowledge. Because you will be gifted with that experiential knowledge. This is called ma'rifah, spiritual wisdom. This is greater than factual knowledge. You know, this is what we need to yearn for. Don't just go after factual knowledge. You know, let experience the truth. So you don't need somebody as a white man to embrace Islam to convince you that Islam is all true, or white man to tell you that Islam is all great. Understand? I'm just using this just to make a point here, because we rush. So that means we are not already convinced. We need to act upon what we know, then we will have that. Continuously pray to God, and there will be times when God has heard you. If you don't have that experience of your prayer being heard, then something wrong with you, because you don't have enough of that faith. You know, all of us should work for that, you know, inshallah, that experiential, to taste that sweetness of the faith. Dhawq, we have to taste faith, the Prophet said. Dhaqat al-iman, you know, he who tastes the faith. And he gave 3 reasons for it. Number 1, that Allah should be your priority number 1. So ask yourself, am I doing this for the love of Allah? And number 2, love people for the love of Allah, not for because he has the same skin like you, or color, or whatever, family or ethnic biryani club or whatever. No, because for the love of Allah. This is what the Prophet taught, the Sahaba practiced it. And then give for the love of Allah. Giving for the love of Allah. So Prophet, these 3 things, if you practice it diligently, you will taste the faith, the Prophet said. So tasting faith, Imam Ghazali says that the problem with majority of Muslims, they haven't tasted Iman. It's just like somebody could be speaking about honey a million years. If he did not taste honey, he doesn't have that experiential knowledge of honey. So we have to jump into that ocean and swim, and then we know, the value of this. So experiential knowledge, experiential. Okay, now next trial, sexual seduction. There are a lot of tales about, love of Yusuf alayhi salam and Zulaykha. They forge all these things because people want to play. Even some of our Qurra, if you look at the way, astaghfirullah, Abdul Basit, I am sure this is one man who would be singing with angels, but he is not an angel. He was not an angel because after all he has this. But when he is reciting this part about, this chasing of Zulaykha, minister's wife, he repeats it so many ways and tones. So the question came to my mind, why is he, is he getting carried away with this kind of going too far? Of course, we shouldn't. I am not blaming him, but we have to be careful. We don't get carried away, and many people got carried away. We have a lot of literature in Persian, Sufi literature and other that, viewing this, mixing this with imaginary tales of that love between the minister's wife and Yusuf alayhi salam, na'udhu billah. And finally, this Yusuf alayhi salam ends marrying her. Astaghfirullah. There is no basis for any of this. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, there is nothing worse than that. Sexual temptation is the worst trial, test that a young person woman can face in life. That's why the Prophet said one of the 7 people to be protected by the shade of Allah is a young person who overcomes sexual advances of the opposite sex, so because of fear of Allah, mindfulness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet also said, if you guarantee me that you will guard your tongue and private parts, I will guarantee your place, your paradise for you. See, because this is something, is the hardest of all tests for human being, especially in their very young age. Of course, I am not saying older people don't fall into it. We are living in such a corrupt world. Unimaginable things are happening, even in the so-called India, where they call it a spiritual astaghfirullah. What kind of a spiritual country it is now? It's become the most corrupt place. And when it comes to these sexual temptations, you read the stories, 80-year-old man who claims to be God man, or woman who calls herself woman God, falling into this kind of temptations, and all kinds of stories coming out in the newspapers. Okay. She, whose house he was in, tried to seduce him against his will. She bolted the doors and said, come. He said, I take refuge in God, for my master. Actually, he has used this, my master. He's thinking of God Almighty, and of course, he's also thinking about the minister as well. So both, this is how the Quranic wording is, such it has layers of meaning in it. So don't limit it to this minister, because he's a spiritual man, he's a prophet actually. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how, the minister bought him and told his wife, let's, after seeing, experiencing his character, we may as well adopt him as a son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, in this way we made this about, make him settle, you know. So he sold and then God settles him. So Yusuf alayhi salam is grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, grateful to the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, there is no contradiction. If you cannot thank human beings, you cannot thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Understand? We have to thank because they are instruments that Allah has made. If Allah did not make them instrument, so we have to be aware of this tension, this interdependence. Surely the wicked will not succeed. So she did desire him and he would have desired her, but for the fact that he saw evidence of his Lord. Because this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, when he attained maturity, we granted him wisdom and sound knowledge. Without wisdom, knowledge alone can, because wisdom and knowledge would give you, will guide you to make sound judgment. So Yusuf alayhi salam, he is a human being. If he didn't have that desire, then of course nothing, what's so big about it? It's not a test then. He is a human being, flesh and blood. So he has desire like anybody else. He could have desired her if not for the fact that he saw evidence from his Lord. So what is that evidence from his Lord? Of course, this evidence, this is this Iman. It doesn't have to be he saw Yaqub alayhi salam biting the finger. This is just made up story. Quran, evidence of faith is that confirmation of his belief in God and standing before him, he was made aware that this sign. So ayat, that's, you see the divine, this suggestion shining, it's a spiritual discovery he's talking. Spiritual discovery, spiritual intuition. Thus it was so that we might divert evil and indecencies from him, for he was one of our purified servants. Purified servant, because how do you purify yourself? You purify yourself by turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and purging your heart. Imam Ghazali uses the metaphor of gardening actually. Those who have done gardening, I am not an expert in that, but if you want to plant anything, you have to weed out, take out the weed first, and that put the right mixture of soil and fertilizer before you plant. Imam Ghazali says same goes with the spiritual purification and planting of the virtues. You cannot plant virtues unless you purge your heart of those weeds. What are they? Jealousy, hatred, pride. Pride is the root, and gluttony, this. So Yusuf alayhi salam had purified himself. Even though he was in that mansion, in that palace, he was a spiritual man. So he was. So we don't need to go after these tales that people have woven. There is no need to indulge in such speculations. Yusuf alayhi salam was a handsome young man. He was very handsome, so much so that the Prophet ﷺ saw him in the ascension, where he saw all the prophets in their celestial form, not in their material form, of course. So he said that when he saw Yusuf alayhi salam and greeted him, it's as though he has been given half of the beauty of the world. Okay, so it's just a hyperbolic statement to tell us that he was really handsome, So is legendary. Okay, unlike any normal person, he was endowed with natural sexual instinct, and yet he was able to master it because of wisdom, piety, and sound judgment. Once faced with the toughest of his tests, once again he turns to God for help. What did he say? I take refuge. A'udhu billah. I take refuge in God. You see how it is? This is the lesson for us to learn. No matter what trial we may face in life, as long as we turn to God and place our trust in Him, we will overcome it. You see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in telling various stories of prophets, reminds us this lesson, and Prophet repeated it in the hadith also. Musa alayhi salam turned to God. When the tyrant challenged him, Pharaoh challenged him, Musa alayhi salam said, Inni uttu billah rabbi wa rabbikum min kulli mutakabbirin la yu'minu bi yawmil hisab. I take refuge in Allah, my Lord and your Lord, from all the tyrants who have no faith in the day of judgment. See? So, when we do that with that faith, repose our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and turn to Him. And that's why istighfar and seeking refuge in the devil, in Allah from the devil, should be a daily meditation, daily, from our daily, self-talk. Or you may want it, affirmation that, if you want, okay. And the Prophet advises that when we set out from our house, we should supplicate this: in the name of Allah, Bismillahi tawakkaltu ala Allah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. You see how the Prophet ﷺ is the interpreter of the Quran. So whatever you see in the hadith, it's an interpretation. What he is interpreting? Lesson from Surah Yusuf, lesson from the story of Musa alayhi salam. You see, telling us this lesson, that when we say this, the Prophet ﷺ, angels will say, reply, you are safe and protected. But we have to say that, just like Isa alayhi salam is supposed to have said in the Gospel, when you pray, God will answer your prayer. But pray well. Because God will not give you snake when you ask for fish. But you have to ask well. Because prayer is not simply words. It's what? It's your yearning, your... It's not just words. So, ask. You will be given. Pray, answer will come. Okay? So, but most people miss the wisdom that we cannot do it by ourselves. The wisdom is we cannot do it by ourselves. We need constant help. The lesson that Sahaba learned from the Prophet was such that they will be doing everything, even the smallest thing. If they want to look for salt, they would still turn to Allah and look for it. If they have to repair the sole of their shoes, they will still pray to Allah and make the material effort. So you see, whatever, this is how you become, you punctuate everything, you infuse everything with the dhikr. So they say, this Western scholars who visited Turkey, Turkey is highly spiritual. They have people who practice Islam, is very, very spiritual there. They say they see to this baker, and this man is baking and smiling. Actually, he is making dhikr. And the man, the observer said, his face is shining. Because he is in the spiritual ecstasy. This ordinary work, you may think it's a mundane thing. For him, it's not a mundane thing. It's a religious act. So if we can transform our ordinary experience in that way, that's what the Aisha radiallahu anha said about the Prophet. He was always in dhikr. كَانَ يَذْكُرُ اللَّهَ فِي جَمِيعِ أَحْيَانِهِ. So the scholar has to discuss, was he making dhikr while he was sitting in the toilet? You understand? They have to answer this question. So the answer is, he was not uttering the name of Allah with his lip, but Allah is still in his mind. And of course the evidence is, as soon as he come out, he's thanking Allah for that relief. And he's entering, is seeking refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He come out, he's thanking Allah for that relief. So you see how Allah subhanahu, how beautiful it is. So may Allah bless me and you to practice dhikr so that it becomes a second nature. And there were people, spiritual people, breathe in and breathe out, tasbih and glorification of Allah. Every breath, this dhikr and tasbih. There are people, still there are people like that, because although the number is diminishing, okay, she chased him and he headed towards the door to escape. And she tore his shirt from the back. She pulled actually, and of course, she tore it because when she pulled it, and he found the door shut. He could not escape. The door is shut. She had already planned for it. But then suddenly the door opened from outside and they saw her husband at the door, and she blurted out, "What is the due of the one who desires evil of your wife but imprisonment or torture?" A'udhu billah. What a, of course, this story will later on have a good end. This woman herself will vindicate, declare the innocence of this prophet chaste. Okay, but of course it will take time for her, because she is really so passionate in her infatuation. He said, "She tried to seduce me, and a witness from her household testified, if his shirt is torn from the front, he is a liar. But if his shirt is torn from the back, then she is lying and he is telling the truth." Okay. And of course, what happened? So when he looked at the shirt, it was torn from the back. He said, "This was a trick of you women. Your trick is serious indeed." Of course, many people would think that Quran is misogyny. Actually, this is what he said, but we cannot put it on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or here is, Joseph, turn away from this, and you wife, because you know why. I will bring you a point here. One of our sisters were defending her thesis. I don't want to mention the name. She is in the intermission. She called me. He said, "I am facing this question. I want you to help me, because the question is from Orientalists is, woman is a fitna." I said to her, they should read the Quran, because in the Quran, "Innama amwalukum wa awladukum fitna." Your wealth and your children are fitna. So Quran also say, we made each one a fitna for the other. So I am a fitna for him, he is a fitna for me. So man is a fitna for woman, woman is a fitna for man. What fitna means? Test. The way we deal with each other proves or disproves our faith. So, but some people, but even Muslims think that woman is something of a lower, she's a seductress or whatever, so we have to watch out. You understand? Of course, that's not the sense the Quran uses the word fitna. Knowledge is a fitna. Iblis failed. He had a lot of knowledge, but he failed. The same way many people with knowledge fail. There's a fitna, they fail. So it is in this sense, but Allah did not say woman is a fitna in the Quran. He did not say that. Allah said your wealth is a fitna, your child is a fitna. You understand? So, thus Yusuf alayhi salam was vindicated. Okay, Yusuf's trial did not end there. Why? Because gossip mill went into overdrive with the story of Yusuf alayhi salam and the minister's wife. Because you get something and now tales, nowadays it's Facebook or whatever, WhatsApp and chat rooms. In the olden days, recently it used to be telephone, and marriages break because of telephone conversations and gossip and things like that. In those days, it's story, in the days you used to sit in the tea shops and coffee houses, and that's from bygone days. They will talk about this, and it is passed on from cafe to cafe, and things like that. And you have even Muhammad Asad sitting in the cafes in Europe, and he learns from the conversation that is going on among the so-called intellectuals and the social scientists in cafes of Europe. Okay, so that instead of gossiping, they are discussing intellectual things. So in this case, the gossip about this story, it's a very, very interesting story, for them. And so instead of shaming her, when she heard about it, instead of shaming her, it emboldened her further. Just like our Trump now, he said, so what? You understand? When he is shamed, he's pointed this thing that, astaghfirullah, we cannot quote it. It makes him even bolder because they think it's such a astaghfirullah. Because the worst thing for a human being is to lose that sense of shame, haya, modesty. That is, if you still have that, then you can be saved. But without that, there is no way. Okay, so in the case of this woman, she would repent, but of course, she invited them over to a feast. She offered them fruits and gave them knives to cut them. And then she told Yusuf alayhi salam to walk in front of them as if he were a model. And lo, they exclaimed, this is no mortal, this is an angel. And being distracted, they cut their fingers. You see, she said, this is the man you slander me about. Yes, I did desire him. I would certainly want him to submit to me, my desire. Okay, so of course, astaghfirullah, this is how, the rich and famous is still, it's like that. It's not an old story. This is unfolding these similar stories in front of us everywhere, not just in America, but in England and India, of all places they call this spiritual place. We have a lot of stories like that. What we learn here is how the rich and famous lose their sense of shame and modesty and become unapologetic about their sins and even boast about them. That's why the Prophet told us, Al-haya'u shu'batun min al-iman, is an integral part of faith, shyness, and modesty, because the word haya is not, because English word shyness is very, very, it has a flatness in it. But haya is much more than that. It's shyness and this modesty that you have this desire to be chaste. And you are shy in front of your Creator because God created you, God blessed you, and you disobey Him. Understand? This was the training that spiritual mentors in Islam would give their students. I have this beautiful lesson. This happened. This one spiritual master had a lot of students, but there is one student, his favorite actually. So the others became jealous. So the master wanted to show them why. He wanted to teach them lesson. So he called for a basket of apples, and he gave each one an apple and said to each one, go and eat where no one can see you and come back. He said, no one. So everyone ate it in no time, came back, but this one brought the apple, as it is. So what happened? Why you didn't eat it? Because you said no one. There is no such a place. Because wherever I go, God is there. So the master said, you see now, this is what I wanted to teach you. This is why he is different. Because he is this consciousness. Well, this is the haya that we should be. One, that's why the poet said, when your mind tells you, I am alone, tell yourself, you are not alone. Bal alayya raqibu. There is someone out there watching you. So one of these Muslim saint, somebody asked him, how you became such a saint? He said, I was only 3 years old. My uncle told me, my son, always repeat these 3 words. Allah is watching, Allah is seeing, Allah is aware, Allah is with me. And I repeated and meditated upon it, and this is how I became what I am. Allahu nadiri, Allahu shahidi, Allahu ma'i. So when you have this awareness, that's why worship Allah as though you are looking at Him. Because even though you don't see Him physically, He does see you. So see Allah in your mind. That's why, Salafi would object when somebody says, I went to the masjid, I saw no one there but Allah. A Salafi may kill that person maybe, but he is telling the truth. What he means is, he is not telling that he saw Allah physically, a statue or something. He saw Allah in his awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So worship Allah as though you see Him. That's what he is saying. Understand? Okay. The milieu in the palace and outside became awash. How do you? Awash, with gossip. And even though Yusuf alayhi salam was deemed innocent, they thought it was better that he was removed from the scene altogether. In fact, this came as an answer to Yusuf alayhi salam's prayer, as he preferred jail over the oppressive milieu. Because it's becoming dirty and dirtier and dirtier. For him, true freedom was to be alone with alone. Who is alone with alone? When you are alone with alone, you are free. Who is that alone? Capital alone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can never be alone. That's why, you have the beautiful example of Ibn Taymiyyah. Unfortunately, the Salafis call him as their father, but he is not like them. He is a highly spiritual man, and his interpretation and fiqh, some of them are really very, very creative and very, very independent, and they have been influential in family reform of family laws in many parts of the Muslim world. He was taken from one jail to another because of his very, very independent views, against the way they, divorce. I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. He said, no, that's not divorce. This divorce cannot be like that. You don't toy with this. It's breaking the family. You understand? And then, of course, the whole thing associated with this kind of triple divorce, it's adultery becoming adultery. So he said this adultery pure and simple. Actually, it's a revolutionary thing he did at that time. So, of course, there are other issues also. So he was thrown from jail to jail, but he said, what can my enemies do to me? My paradise is always within my heart. If they jail me, it's a spiritual retreat for me. If they kill me, that is martyrdom for me. You understand? Habsi khalwa. It's an opportunity for spirit to be alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there is no wahsha, there is no strangeness there is no loneliness. Yusuf alayhi salam said, my Lord, prison is dearer to me than succumbing to the desires. And unless you divert their cunning from me, I would be inclined towards them and would act foolishly like them. So his Lord answered him, for God is the all-hearing, the all-knowing. And it occurred to them to send him away to jail for some time. Okay, so this is how now another couple of years in jail. Okay, we will come to that inshallah. And I stop here. If anybody has a question, please address it now. Alhamdulillah, we finished today's session. Okay, next week is, but please read, the verses, at least 2 dozen verses, because we have only 2 more sessions. We have to. Okay, so is it okay? Discussions are clear? Okay. So if I don't want to force you to ask question, if you have no question, we will finish it here and may offer the dua. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, the whole thing is not an entertainment. I am teaching it to benefit myself actually first. Because if I don't preach what I preach to you, if I don't practice, I will be the worst one. So I remind myself that, every time I teach this thing, I want to practice it. So at least lesson for us today is seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are out into the world now full of temptations. It's not just man for woman, woman for man. Is wealth is temptation. So much temptations. When you see the other person driving a better car, it's a fitna for us. You understand? So everything out. So we are running from fitna to fitna, and of course Rohingyas. That's a fitna for me and you. What we hear about their pride is a fitna for us. What are we going to do about it? Muslim world virtually silent except only 1 or 2 countries. If they said unitedly enough is enough, nobody. And that's why that Afro-American Muslim from America, I really was moved by his crying and saying this point, making this point. If they had unitedly took a stand, enough is enough. But of course we are failing that test now. Failing. It's a test. So not Yusuf alayhi salam facing. Every day we face tests like that. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us that power and strength. Bismillahi tawakkaltu ala Allah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Every time you get out of the house, make sure you read it and mean it. Because ask Allah for a fish, He will give you fish, but ask diligently and, sincerely. It should be a yearning, it should be, what you have the desire in your, so inshallah, and make dhikr. Believe me, when you walk, condition yourself to make dhikr and you will see the fruits of it. You will experience the results. Every day if you do that, and of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely will bless us, inshallah. And by the way, I want to narrate to you something. I was visiting a doctor. I reminded him of our duty to give charity to Rohingya. I was moved by what he said to me. He said, I learned to give 20% of whatever I earn in charity, because I learned it a hard way. Because every time I give charity, Allah blesses me more and more. I said to him, this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. And of course, he learned it from Ismailis, because Ismaili working for him said she gives 10%. So he said to himself, I am from Ahlul Sunnah, I should be giving 20%. You understand? So of course there are people like that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among them, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.